Don is fast, dynamic, amazing with people, builds rapport.
I'm a bit of a people person. It's not just what you do, it's sort of how you make people feel.
You walk into a room with Don, he may know absolutely nobody. He will walk out with 10 best friends.
Yeah.
You know, how do you do it? How do you do it? Like, and can you tell me?
I've always just treated people like they're just people. Like, hierarchy's never really been a thing. Everyone always thinks I'm Scottish or the UK or something. It's just, God, all right. Especially when people go, "Did you watch the England result?" No, but I hope they lost.
Yeah.
In terms of cultures of things, one of the challenges I found as an Irish person coming to the UK and then over here is
Don McGowan is an authentic and strategic executive leader with a proven track record of driving business outcomes through his technology expertise, working at big names such as Altian, Accenture, Coles, Target, Greater Western Water, and most recently, Linfox Armaguard. With over 20 years of experience in digital transformations and M&A, Don excels in shaping digital and technology strategies, focusing on cyber, transformational programs, and cultural updates across various industries such as finance, government, utilities, retail, and telecommunications. His Tier 1 consulting background and passion for cultural change make him a unique leader who thrives on guiding organisations to achieve their business goals. Join us today as we delve into Don's impressive career journey and discover how his people-centric approach has been the cornerstone of his success. Here we go. So, Don, welcome to Tales from Tech Titans. And obviously, we know each other pretty well, but I'm excited today to see what, I guess, new things I'm going to learn about you through the journey. But let's start right at the beginning. And the Irish twang's probably a giveaway to your heritage, but I think Dublin was home for you as a child. That's where you grew up. So what was a young Don McGowan like?
Very dangerous.
You were small at the blocks.
Do you need subtitles? Yeah. Do you need subtitles on it? I was always an energetic child.
Yeah.
You know, never really at home.
Yeah.
You know, in Dublin, I was obviously born in the 70s, but in the early 80s when it really came to life, it was a very different environment where it is today. Like, you know, it was probably, there was elements of, poverty and stuff like that. You know, there was lots of unemployment and there was lots of stuff that was just happening in the industry. So, you know, for me to, you know, I was very studious but busy, if you know what I mean. So, like, I played a lot of football, I got into sort of martial arts, I did lots of things just to keep myself busy. Yeah. And then I started work quite early. You know, I had a number of different jobs.
Yeah. What were your first jobs?
I got a job through this, the vice principal of the school, actually. He actually asked me and a couple of other blokes to go work with him in the race course. He had a sidekick. Basically, it was a company called Peter O'Brien Catering. And went out there, I remember it was like Boxing Day, or St. Stephen's Day in Ireland, as they say. Yeah. And went out there, worked as a waiter. And one minute I was making soup and chips, and then I'd be making sandwiches, and then all of a sudden, you know, going around, like when people were there, you were sort of, you know, collecting plates and glasses and stuff like that. And I did that job for probably a couple of years on the side. I think there was a big race.
This is when you were at secondary school?
Yeah, secondary school. I was about 15. Probably child labour these days. You wouldn't be allowed right now. But
no, probably not. But what do you reckon made the teacher give you a tap on the shoulder?
I think because I was known in the school to be probably a little bit of a hard worker, and he grabbed me and a couple of the other guys. A couple of them I was probably just the smallest out of the four that he took. Yeah. A couple of the other guys were sort of beefier, older looking guys, but you know, I was a pretty hard worker in school, and I was known for that. So
great. And what were you kind of thinking at that point you wanted to be as a grown up? You know, what was the kind of goal?
Oh, look, I was very strong in maths and engineering and all that type of stuff. So, you know, I went to the career counsellors in the school at the time, and you know, because they do IQ tests and all the stuff, and I got pretty good scores and all that stuff. But at the time, I remember initially thinking, I think I'll be a pilot. But then I just thought, I looked into it, wasn't really for me. Yeah. Felt like I was just a bus driver in the sky, and I apologise to any pilots out there who are watching this. But it was just like, it wasn't Top Gun, right? Because I think at the time Top Gun was pretty big, and you know, it just wasn't that type of job then I decided to pursue. my dad was an engineer, so I probably felt engineering would be something that I'd get into. And as I learned more and more towards the end of my school time, I seen electronics as being a good industry, or software industry, to get into.
Yeah.
Intel had just moved to Ireland at the time, and the Celtic Tiger was sort of starting to pour a little bit. So the software engineering and sort of all that, background, infrastructure, telecommunications, was really starting to kick off. And so we're just seeing that as a good industry to get into.
Yeah, right. So that would have been like mid-90s.
Yeah, early 90s when I was sort of picking out the university. So it was probably 93, 94.
You sort of mentioned there as well, your dad was an engineer.
Yeah.
So how much of an influence was kind of that family aspect around your kind of career choices?
Yeah, played probably a big bit. Like, my dad was a car mechanic, and then he was a welder, and he got into sort of lots of different engineering things. He was a sort of a guy that would fix anything. Give him a problem, he'd fix it.
Yeah.
And I probably took that sort of attitude to life too. Half the time he'd have us out the back garden, because he'd be servicing cars on a little side gig, or when he got made redundant. Actually, he was the biggest car company in Ireland at the time. It was a company called McGowan's, and they shut down and replaced that whole place with a shopping centre. Like I said, so it was the mid-80s.
Yeah.
So my dad was unemployed for a couple of years, and but to make money, he'd sort of service cars on the side.
Yeah,
so we were sort of always helping out with that around when we were young.
But those moments, I think, in your upbringing are always, I guess, quite pivotal to the future, I reckon.
Yes.
Then you kind of learn about the reality of the world.
That's exactly right.
I think experiencing a parent being made redundant, or the loss of income into a house, you kind of realise the importance of cash, let's say, or to life, and you no doubt would have had that impact as well.
That's exactly right. You just don't take anything for granted, and things can change pretty quick. So he had a pretty senior role in that organisation, and to be just let go like that was a bit of a shock. But my dad's pretty resilient guy at the time, so he just pushed on and ended up getting into windows and conservatories and installing that type of stuff. So that was another little side gig that I ended up doing. Throughout my youth, where he might just need some arms and legs to help him on specific days. So we sort of all the boys. So I've got 3 brothers. So we'd all be called in, or get a tap on the shoulder on a specific week where you look like you're going to sit at home for a bit. My dad was one of them where you can't just sit at home.
Yes.
You need to, go earn your keep.
Yeah.
Get yourself out there and start working, and so that's how from an early age I had lots of different jobs and lots of different opportunities. Yeah,
it's great. I think seeing what your parents do for a living, and getting out and seeing, I think it's really important, and I think it's almost got lost a bit in the current generation.
Yes.
Certainly kind of growing up, I knew as a kid exactly what my parents did.
Yes.
And I know a lot of my friends were in the same situation, but I kind of worried that maybe a lot of kids today, they see their parents work from home or get in the car and go off to the office, but they don't necessarily know what they do.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know how we encourage more of that, because I think that's where you do learn about the world of work. There's the careers advisors and stuff as a kid, but it's pretty generic jobs at that point they're talking to you about, right? Yeah,
that's exactly right. And at the time you don't really know what work is about. You just
that's right.
I'm going somewhere and I'm going to get money.
That's right.
Whereas I've always enjoyed, and I think Jane said this, that I could go into a room and come out with 10 new friends.
Yeah,
that's the way I sort of always treated work. I go into work and I try and enjoy it and socialise and meet people and understand people, because it's the people aspect that makes jobs successful.
100%. I saw, so obviously from what you were saying there, and I saw that you studied electronics engineering at Dublin University. I guess when you were coming out of university at that point, you then joined Altian.
Yes.
As a software engineer, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right? In Java and Oracle?
Yes.
I think I was really. Were you a good coder?
I was pretty good. I got certified in Java.
Certificates don't mean anything.
Yeah. It was a great organisation. I have to say, and that was I still remember meeting all the leadership team, the executive, and even the board. The chairman they're all really nice people. They were very easy to talk to, and they made you feel safe and comfortable, while also having a little bit of fun while in there. A lot of the people in the organisation were quite young.
Yeah.
So Magnus O'Driscoll, I think, is still there. He's the managing director.
Yeah.
And he just created an environment where you actually could learn and grow. I'd done lots of courses in there. I'd done, I got certified in Oracle, so DBA essentially, Java. Built that, it gave me an opportunity to travel a little bit as well. So I've done my first stints in the UK with Altion. So as a consultant, went over to sort of a company called Energis. They don't exist anymore. So because it was our sort of transportation and transmission network, networks, SDH networks, that we were selling software for. You go out and you're meeting all these wonderful people in the UK and trying to, talk up your products and understand their business needs, and then make changes or design changes and send it back to base camp. Where people, so that was my real first stint as a consultant. And
and I spotted that you went from coding almost to consulting as a client account manager in that role. And I was going to ask, who spotted the potential in you to do that?
I think it was probably, I don't remember if you remember the dot-com bust in 2001, I think it was. And I'd been in Altion a few years at that stage. And I'd played a couple of different roles. So, I was lead designer of one of the functions. So we did a whole re-platform of the old product, which was called TNAS. It was all C and multi front end to a Java back end with J2EE objects, etc. .com bust happened 2001. All of a sudden we went from, when I joined the company, I think I was the 40th employee apparently. We ballooned to 120, 130 within the first 18 months that I was there. Then .com bust happened in, after I was there about 2 years, and we had to let go everybody. So we were back down to like 20 people. So all of a sudden it was like, well, I need someone to go to the UK because I need the guy who's over there on holidays. Can you go? So I went, and we went around the room. Who can go? Who does it fit? Don, you know the products. You know everything. Do you want to give it a stint? So I sort of fell into it a little bit. And when you're going through, mass redundancies like that, I remember sitting on the days where they were making people redundant, waiting for a phone call. They'd say, I want everybody in the office. Everybody needs to be here. Between 10 and 11, the phone's going to ring. And if you get a call, you have to come up to the HR office. And everybody knew what was happening. So you were sort of sitting there, it was like Squid Game. It was like...
It's interesting because a lot of people that go through that experience, there's the initial relief, but then you get that kind of survivor guilt.
Did
you experience that?
A little bit, because there was some really good friends that I'd made in my time there. And when they go, you sort of go, geez, why wasn't it me type of thing. Because some of them were really good people, and it's business decisions. And, I've been in a number of organisations since where, I quickly realised it's not personalities, it's not anything, it's a business decision that's made on a number of different factors, and it is what it is. So I quickly understood it. But to your point, when people were leaving and you were going to the leaving drinks, you're like, because a couple of them ended up falling out of IT altogether. They went and got different jobs and never went back.
It's interesting, that's a bit of a sliding doors moment, isn't it, in some ways? Not saying that you would have left IT at that point, but these moments early in your career can be quite, I guess, pivotal in terms of what happens next. Again, it's interesting, I'm just reflecting, you were talking obviously about at secondary school, and the teacher tapped you on the shoulder for the job there at the racecourse, and then here you got a business going from 120 to 20. You're probably too modest to share, but there's obviously something about you that makes people want to put you in the team.
I think there's probably, just like I mentioned earlier, I was always a hard worker. Like I was never afraid to roll up my sleeves and do anything. But I think it's, to me, there's elements of culture and EQ as well as IQ. So I think I like to see myself as somebody that checks in on people. I've always been like that. I'm a bit of a people person. And sometimes it's tiring when you get home at night because you're talking half the day. But I think it's just more, and it's always been important in my career, is it's not just what you do, it's sort of how you make people feel. And that's how Jen made that comments in hers a couple of weeks ago, which is because I can go in and I just immediately relate. I've had enough different types of jobs as I was young to, really connect with people. Like I think at one stage I was a cleaner, I was a grounds maintenance person in a pregnancy test factory, of all things. But all of a sudden you start to appreciate what it's like to be a cleaner, and as a waiter, I appreciated waiters. So even now when I go to cafes with my kids or with my older kids, I always say, make sure you say thank you.
Yeah.
Because it's nice to be thanked when somebody, even just hands you a menu or, leaves the dish in front of you. It's nice just to go, hey, thanks, I appreciate that.
It's interesting what you say about, I guess, how people make you feel. It's not just what they say. In your career, who's been impactful in terms of how they've made you feel?
There's so many. Like I mentioned, I look at the leadership teams across most of the organisations I've been in, and most of them there's been either a key member that I'd connect with, and you could just have a conversation. And I've always just treated people like they're just people. Like hierarchy's never really been a thing.
Yeah.
So I always just see people as for what they are. They're just a bloke's going to work. They might have family, might have kids.
Yeah.
So I try and talk to people, and the ones who are open to them conversations, you sort of connect with. Like Magnus O'Driscoll, like I mentioned in Altion, he was a great guy. I knew a lot about his family, about his history. The rest of the leadership team in that organisation too. I always just spoke to him.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were up for it. They just have a chat. So Magnus was one. Accenture was a little bit different because I found that you didn't really have a core team that you just connected with.
Yeah.
Because you were placed out at different sites or customers, vendor places.
Yeah.
All the time, so it was always changeable. So you might go in and you'd catch up with some vendors and you'd talk to them or customers. So you'd strike up a relationship, but then you'd have to keep your guard up a little bit because you're a consultant and you can't get into nitty gritties and make them real personal connections. It's probably you need to keep it at arm's length. Coles.
I was going to say the worst thing for a consultant is to go native, right?
Yeah,
and to end up flipping to the client's problem.
Yes.
You're still there as a solution. You've got to understand the problem. You're still there as a solution provider.
Yes.
Before we go on to Coles, I was going to ask you about Accenture. So what motivated that move?
I think at the time, because I'd done the little elements of consulting in Altion, and where that organisation was obviously constrained, it was partially owned by the major telecom provider in Ireland at the time, which was Telecom Éireann. I could see there was a limit to where I could go, whereas Accenture, which were they just become Accenture at the time. They used to be Anderson Consulting.
Yeah.
They were just down the road. I'd heard a few people had gone and experienced good things.
Yeah.
I really wanted to push myself because people talk to me about, well, if you go in there, you're not just going to, be coding, or you're not going to be, managing, a service desk or whatever the case may be. You could be doing anything at any time. And I was always curious. Always curious as a kid.
Yeah.
Still am. It's just something natural. Like as soon as I see something on the TV, I'll Google it. You know what I mean? If I go, I wonder what that is. And that's what really took me into Accenture. So major organisation, great reputation, and I just thought I'll give it a whirl.
Was moving into a big organisation like that natural for you?
I'd throw my hat at anything.
Yeah.
So I think I like to make myself uncomfortable sometimes because I can't really do BAU. I get a little bit itchy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was probably an itch that I needed to scratch.
Yeah.
And see whether I could go with it. I think the organisation itself, it's a little bit, and I talk to my kids about this sometimes, with the older kids, really around work, and if you're going to move into professional industry, you should go work for one of the big firms, because it really sets the scene for your work ethics, and if you can survive in that place, you'll have lots of fun because you get to travel, and it's sort of work hard, play hard.
Yeah. What's the shelf life, do you think, in consulting?
When I was there, they said 3 years. If you lasted more than 3 years, you're probably institutionalised and you'll stay there forever. Yeah. Because it's really up or out type of mentality in a lot of them environments. So you either progress and go to the next level, or you probably go a bit stale and they'll either get rid of you or you'll fall out yourself. I lasted 3 years. At the end, I was probably a little bit burnt out.
Yeah.
It was a very different environment. So coming from Altion, whereas I'd see it as a really caring, and you were sort of taken care of by the leadership team, and you didn't get exposure to a lot of the administration and just the back end stuff. They just let you do what you wanted to do, what you were good at. So coding or go speak to consultants. But I didn't have to think of stuff like how many hours did I charge that customer, and book your own flights, book your own accommodation, but travel, all the stuff that you'd sort of take for granted. You get to Accenture, all of a sudden you're organising it all yourself, and if you needed some advice, you have to literally look up on their intranet to go, who's an expert in that? And then reach out yourself. You couldn't go to somebody and go, hey, do you know anybody that does X, Y, or Z? It was really around, being, really motivated and resourceful to sort of get stuff done on your own patch.
I'd imagine it also teaches you the commerciality of time.
100%.
As you say, you're always on a timesheet. Back to a client. I don't know if you had some kind of targets around billable hours and all that kind of stuff, I'd imagine.
100%.
Then there's probably an extreme of that, but I think then coming back into industry, it teaches you the importance of the dollars you're spending. It's not just on the assets or the capex you're spending the money on. It's putting 10 people into a meeting for 2 hours is pretty expensive.
Yes, 100%. And you do start to get that commercial lens on things, and there's probably a little bit of an attitude towards consultants as well. So you start to understand both sides of the fence. So coming back in, you go, I can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to sell me a little bit more. So you sort of have that conversation, and especially even now in today's world, sometimes people talk to me and I go, right, okay, can we just stop for a second? I'm actually ex-Accenture, so I know what you're trying to do. Let's just go with the outcomes that I'm trying to achieve today and talk about other stuff later.
Yeah, that makes sense. I saw through that time you spent a lot of time in retail projects in particular. What did that kind of teach you about industry? Retail's
a very different industry. It's all about the margins and the customer and end to end. At the time, you get exposed to different elements of it. So if it's the customer side, it's about how do we sell the product, how do we market the product, how do we track the product. It's always inventory. Everything's about inventory. But then it depends on the retailer that you're in. It's you can move into, like, if you're a vertical retailer, it's how do we design the product? How do we, from ideation right through to getting it on the shelf and selling it? It's a very different way of thinking as well. So, if you look at Coles, which is grocery, versus Target, which is merchandise and product, it's two completely different things.
As a technologist, let's say, working in that sector, how important is it to understand, the cut and thrust of what the industry is doing to be able to develop those solutions?
It's very important. I think with any industry, I think it's important to understand first off the business and what you're trying to achieve. And that's what in most of the organisations I've gone into, I really immersed myself in it. Like in Coles, I remember when Ian McLeod came in, he used to make people go to stores and spend at least a week in stores every year, just to reconnect and understand what the business is about. And I took that to even further extremes, like where when I got onto logistics projects, so I'd go out and spend some time in the distribution centres, because it's all well and good looking at a diagram on a page, but unless you go out and actually talk to the people and figure out the challenges that they have on a day-to-day basis, whether it's rostering or the receiving processes and the off-boarding process, packing processes. It's all well and good talking about it until you actually go out and actually try and do it, and you go, that's a pain. Surely there should be easier ways of doing it than that. And how much paper used to be involved, and all of a sudden it's you try and digitise everything. But a lot of it's down to data and data quality, and in retail it's really down to inventory.
Because they have to move that around quick, right?
Yes.
As in, it's cash sitting on the shelves that they need to turn around.
But it's the turnaround time of getting from, like I mentioned, either the order process to getting it available to the store, and it was shelf lives and different concepts that are really there in retail that are really important. Because if you got fresh produce, you need to get it from the farm to the store really quickly. So what's the most optimal time? And then get your ordering right. How much do I need? Well, coming up to Easter, right, we're going to need a little bit more of this, that and the other, because that's what people normally eat. So when ramping up and ramping down and using historical data to drive your forecasts and all that type of stuff, that's the stuff that really drives that industry.
And I guess that's where data's really transformed that industry.
100%.
From your kind of traditional supermarkets. And I think, I'm sure, did I see, maybe I'm getting my wires crossed, did you do some work with Tesco through that process?
I did elements with Tesco back in the day when I was in Accenture. Yeah, there was stuff.
Because they were the kind of poster child with Clubcard, and I think at one point, one in every £8 in the UK was spent with Tesco, retail pounds.
They were like reference for everybody almost globally. Like there was always them and Walmart. So what Walmart's done, and Carrefour in Europe. But Tesco's definitely, and they had some issues when they tried to go into the States and into Asia, and probably pulled back and refocused on some of the basics. Yeah. But they're an absolute behemoth of a company, and I still love going. Like I went with Joanne only a few weeks ago when I was back in Ireland. Yeah. The first thing you went with Tesco's and have a look around and see how they're managing stuff, and the price points, and
it's a pretty impressive organisation. Yeah. As you say, it sets the benchmark globally.
Yes.
I guess talking about the UK, I saw through your time at Accenture, you moved from Ireland to Manchester, I think.
Yeah, I lived in Manchester for a year.
I'm not going to ask too many stories about that time. But how did you find that transition, I guess, coming from Ireland and being away from home and moving into a different country?
Yeah, look, I enjoyed it. It was a challenge, and again, I looked at my family. My dad moved to the UK for about a year when he was young. Yep. So knowing that he'd done it, you sort of go, well, my dad did it, so why couldn't I do it? You know what I mean? Yep. So it was one of them where I thought with Accenture, again, you had to sort of sort out all your own flights, but the accommodation, they put you up in really nice accommodation. Yep. So when you've got somewhere nice to stay and it's all laid out for you, it makes things a little bit easier. So, well done to them. They always put you in the best spots and set you up for success in them terms. Yep. And then, your flights is just something that you just manage yourself. So when I needed to go home, I just go home. Yeah. Okay. So I'd normally stay for 2 weeks and then go home every second weekend or whatever. And
it's not a million miles, is it? Right, across the coast. Yeah. I guess slightly different because then in 2006 you left Accenture. Yep. And you moved to Melbourne. That's a completely different kettle of fish. Moving from Dublin to Manchester, and this time without, I guess, the safety net of your previous relocation. You'd stayed with your company.
Yes.
Right. So only one thing was changing where you lived. Yes. Your job was the same, but with this, obviously, coming out to Australia. So what kind of triggered you move over here?
I think again the opportunity. So Coles were going through obviously the major transformation that they were journey that they were on, and there was a number of different phases, and I think there was 6 or 7 phases. They'd completed phase 1. I'd got a call probably 6 months before I actually came out, offered to come out. At the time, it was through a company, People Bank, at the time. I initially turned it down. I wasn't ready. I wanted to sort of land a couple of pieces that were in the Argos account at the time. Oh yeah. So I was living in Milton Keynes, God bless me, all the roundabouts. I was there.
Argos and Milton Keynes, but you're living the dream.
Yeah, the only way was up. Yeah. Joking. Yeah, anyone from Argos, please. So and I probably had enough of the travelling because I was living out of a suitcase. Yeah. And I sort of said, am I going to go and settle back in Dublin? Will I move to London? And maybe because I basically had an offer from a couple of offers, one from Oracle at the time and another from Tesco's themselves as a contractor. Yeah. And I just decided, I'm going to look at the Australia one again. And I knew a couple of people that had come out. Knew nothing about Melbourne.
I was going to say, had you been to Australia before?
No. And some of my friends went when I was young. So in Ireland, there was the thing to do. Like up to 25, you could get a 1-year visa and come over and work. And it just never suited me. I couldn't backpack. I'm not being pretentious. I just couldn't do it. I just wouldn't. I don't like camping. I don't. It's just not me. So I just sort of went, not doing that way. Yeah. So to get an opportunity and come out, and the money was, pretty good. So I just went, all right, I'll give it a whirl for 6 months. I spoke to my dad again, and my dad said, I'm jealous. I would have loved that opportunity. Yeah. So that sort of pushed it.
How old were you at that point?
It's 29. Just nearly 30. Yeah,
so it's a good 30. Age. Like you've done enough in life to know a bit about the world, but you're still young enough to. Yeah. If it doesn't work out, do a U-turn, go back, and nothing's really damaged at that point.
That's exactly right. And when I spoke to the people in Accenture about it, and they sort of said, look, if it doesn't work out, you can come back. Yeah. And I just, no, probably not. But, I'd done my time. I'd made lots of great friends. And the funny thing was, when I came out, the people that were in Manchester with me and in Milton Keynes all arrived within a week.
Yeah.
So I came out as a contractor, but they came out through Accenture, and a lot of the same people were there on the same account, and we were working almost in the same team structures. And
so that helps from a kind of social. Was there ever a moment when you kind of thought, this isn't for me, or maybe I'll go home?
No, like there was elements of sometimes loneliness where you sort of go, you know, what I like that's the bits where you sort of miss your mates. Do you know what I mean? Because you've got work mates, and you know you have that. Like I mentioned earlier, every second week I'd go home from the UK anyway with flights, and you know you connect with your own friends and have Irish banter and whatever else. So every now and again that might happen, but I just found ways around it. Like I joined the soccer team here, and you know that had Irish English sort of connections as well. So that makes always makes
it's
sense.
a long way to go to get a game. Did you think this would be forever when you came out?
No. I was thinking 6 months to a year, and then I was probably going to try and head on to somewhere else. Whether it was in my head, I was thinking maybe Singapore or Canada, Vancouver. We had some jobs in the retail, technology space at the time. So I was thinking try and get in somewhere over there.
Little stepstone or something.
But I enjoyed it too much then. That was it.
I think something that I know I personally encountered when I moved out here was probably the lack of appreciation of local knowledge.
Yes.
You know, you've been successful in a different country, in a different territory or whatever, and then you move to a new city and people kind of want to judge you based on what you do here.
Yes.
And I'm always mindful of that with Melbourne is a huge migrant city, a lot of new people coming here. How did you kind of navigate that?
In what terms? Sorry.
Just in terms of building that local knowledge and that local awareness, how did you kind of build that network to set yourself up for the success?
So there was a guy that I hadn't seen him for a few years. His name was Chris O'Neill. And he had moved out here probably 3 years before I did. And I just gave him a bell in the first week, caught up. And then he had and he was quite older than me, he was about 15, 16 years older. Great guy, still a good friend. And he integrated me into sort of his network, and they were all older English guys. Some of them are chefs, the celebrity chefs, so Michael Lambie and Paul Wilson and a couple of these other guys that are sort of, big chefs in Melbourne. So just started to hang around with them a little bit every now and again. You'd catch up, and they sort of told me how this environment operates compared to the UK and Irish thinking on life. So you sort of just integrated.
Yeah, okay.
That made things easier for me. They were like, don't do this type of thing. So it was almost like that big brother, sister community type thing where all of a sudden I felt like I was part of something, and if I needed to talk to somebody about something, I could just give them a call.
I think mentor's maybe the wrong word for it, but I think when you relocate, having someone that knows the lay of the land is important. What differences, when you kind of reflect back now, do you think there is between sort of working life and culture in, say, Ireland, UK compared to Australia?
That's a good question. I find, and again, it depends on where you are. What I like about people here is, and work here is, people do like to just get home and go to the beach and do their the sort of the social stuff. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They're very fit and athletic. Like you go around the botanical gardens on any given day, it's packed. Yeah. And get down I lived in South Melbourne when I first arrived, so I'd always be down these areas, and I was always amazed with the amount of people that you see out. Yeah. And specifically even people with families. I always thought that's great. Like they focus on that stuff. In Ireland, having lived in Manchester, it just rained every day. So, half the time I stayed and walked more because it was just like just something to do. And then you might go to the pub where there'd be a fire. So you don't have just go almost transitioning. So it made sort of things difficult unless you played some indoor soccer or something. Yeah. But it was just that sort of different way. I when I did get here first, I felt like I went back in time. Yeah. A little bit. There was like the shops weren't open on a Sunday. Yeah. I didn't understand that. Yeah. 24-hour shopping wasn't really a thing. Some of the restaurants wouldn't be open on certain days of the week, so I couldn't get my head around it. Do you know what I mean? And even when I go back to Ireland now, you sort of forget, because you can go to the pub and get your lunch, and the pub's absolutely chockers, but it's a pub. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's just different.
Yeah, it's different, and I often say this to people. I don't think one's better than the other, by the way. And you're right, I actually prefer maybe the slightly different pace.
Yeah.
I worked in London for a long time before I came here, and that was just frantic.
Yes.
But also very transactional.
That's exactly right.
People would meet with you because there was something in it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think when I first got to Melbourne, I could reach out to people and say, "Do you want to catch up?" Yeah, great. I'll buy you coffee. I want to get to know about you and why. And I feel that people here are much more invested in relationships,
100%.
and business and the world of work is much more relational.
Yes.
As a result, which I think is really appealing.
I think it's gotten better. I think it's grown. And people are getting more focused on relationships. It used to be about results. Now I think it's building more into relationships.
Yeah.
And people are taking times, like you said, to have coffees, etc. In terms of cultures of things, one of the challenges I found as an Irish person coming to the UK and then over here it is, like in Ireland, you can go on a bus and you just sit there and start talking to randoms and they'll talk back. And especially in a pub, you go into a pub, you basically have a load of new mates.
Yeah.
Because everybody just sort of talks. Do you know what I mean? Like, how are you going? Yeah, the weather's wherever. Yeah. And you sort of move along, you can just have them conversations.
Yeah.
Whereas I find the UK, I always felt it was a bit cold, like nobody talks.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? You're on a train, you're on the tube.
No one makes eye contact.
No one makes eye contact.
Yes, right, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's a bit different. Do you know what I mean? And here it's probably not as bad as the UK, but it's still a little bit colder. Everyone's a little bit within themselves, but it's a multicultural environment, so you have to expect it.
Well, that's right. And it goes back to that kind of point of Melbourne or Australia in general being a migrant country.
Yeah.
There's four of us sitting in the room. You can only see two of us, but none of us were born here.
Yes.
So you end up meeting people, and it's their story. How did you get here? How did you arrive? Why did you come here? I think it's a really point of commonality that people can bond over quite quickly.
Yes.
And everyone kind of knows what each other's experienced by coming somewhere new.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes people say, "Oh, where are you from?" You know what I mean? And you don't want to be rude or whatever, because everyone always thinks I'm Scottish or the UK or something. It's just, God, all right. Especially when people go, "Did you watch the England result?" No, but I hope they lost.
Yeah.
I always say that to my mates, and it's just one of them things. But most of my mates are English, by the way. So but it's just a bit of banter. It's quite funny.
So let's get back to Coles. So you were there for 9 years, all up. And I saw through that time there's some big career moves. I think you started as like a retail platform specialist, I think, and you ended up in kind of architecture. I guess what I was interested in is going into a big corporate like Coles. You kind of come from Accenture, coming to a new country. Is it a relatively safe landing going into a big established organisation like that in terms of being able to, I guess, establish yourself in a new place?
I think for me, well, the bit that probably made it a little bit easier was the Accenture connection and a lot of the same people being there. Or in terms of personalities and that environment, I think because I came in as an expert, in specific technologies that they were trying to implement, it sort of helped because they wanted to get to know me, they wanted me to be successful, they wanted me to contribute. So you sort of felt important and you were sort of embraced because of your knowledge.
Yeah, okay.
So in that sense, it was a great environment. Like 9 years, I blinked and it was 9 years. It was just like, because there was so many different roles. At one stage I thought I was going to, lose my job because I think in 2008 they got bought by West Farmers. Yeah. And they separated out from Moore. All of a sudden there was the separation pieces from Target and Kmart, and the whole thing started to break apart. And it became Coles Group, and there was, if we hadn't rolled out what was the store replenishment components at the time, which I had helped design and deliver, I probably would have been gone because there was people losing their jobs again. So because of everything was just put on ice, major programs, and there was a big focus on just getting the store formats right and the stores right, and that's how at one stage they moved me into like a support team role, where it was like, help the support team uplift because you've done this in the past. So, and I did that for probably 6 to 8 months, and then I was back onto projects again once everything kicked back off again.
But that's a nervy time as well, 2008, because that's GFC time.
GFC,
and that's uncertainty for everyone, right? In terms of, I guess most people would back themselves. I'm sure you would if in a redundancy situation, but not when you've got a GFC going on.
100%. I was probably fortunate that, that we had just kicked off that program, and it was a strategic program. They'd invested heavily in it.
Yeah.
They had already put the cards on the table for it, so it was like, well, they couldn't really take them back up. So I was just lucky that if it had happened 6 months earlier, the whole thing might have been shut down.
Yeah, right.
But once, you know, we got over that initial hump, and the executive team sort of said, oh, okay, that's the right thing to do, it just accelerated away really quick, and it rolled out to 800 stores. And, you know,
and it turns from threat to opportunity, right? As in, you know, there's going to be a lot of change in the organisation. You've got a chance to really show what you can deliver. For a new entity that's being sort of put together as well.
100%. And like I said, I think that was phase 3 of their major transformation program. They had 6 phases, so I was heavily involved in the rest of them phases. And like I said, it was different roles. It was it was Coles. They call you, I think my title at the time was technical specialist or something, because I could just move anywhere across anything. But I got heavily involved in lots of other stuff.
What did you enjoy the most about your time at Coles?
Just the change, that's how, like, now when I speak to my own team and the teams that I've, you know, managed previously, it's that opportunity to learn and grow, which I want to always foster that within throughout the whole of IT, in where I am today and in the previous organisations. It's like it's about learning and growing, because I think change gets a little bit tedious, and for some people it's great. Like, some people it's just like they go to work because that's what they want to do. They just want to rinse, repeat. For others, it's about growing and developing themselves. And I don't mind which one you are, you know, but as long as we know which one you are, then we can cater for that. And for me, the opportunity with Coles I really enjoyed was, you know, the learning and growing. But not only that, was the people as well. So we had some great people in there, and friends for life.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because when you go through stuff like what you go through, it's, you know, you do develop friends for life. And I've had Altion, still have friends there. You know, they're not at Altion anymore, but they've actually moved on. I'm still in contact with them. Same with Accenture, same with Coles, same Target.
It's where you spend most of your time.
Yes.
Right? And you end up around like-minded people, things in common. You go through good times, bad times. Like, it's natural you're going to make that kind of connection with people.
Yeah, 100%.
You mentioned, obviously, you moved around a few different roles and up the ladder and probably across the ladders and all sorts. It's like a game of snakes and ladders, actually, your career at Coles. But how did you find those opportunities? You know, was someone tapping you on the shoulder, or were you proactively kind of putting yourself out there for things?
It was a bit of both, but in the main, it was probably, hey, Don knows that, get him involved. So I became sort of this fountain of knowledge for a lot of the core systems. Everything was built around the core, which was the merge systems. So, you know, if you're going to do a POS replacement, well, you can't make that happen without the merge system. You know, somebody who understands the merge systems. You're going to do space range, you can't do it without having the merge system, the forecasting systems. So all of a sudden I was being sucked into all types of conversations at all times, and it was really down to what was the priority, what was the major programs. You know, one of the ones in the end was the retail ready meat program. It was major program from a, you know, investment perspective. IT investment was decent size, but from an actual, you know, bricks and mortar and getting people in to build one of the biggest facilities in the Southern Hemisphere that would do red and white meat at the same time was unheard of. That was great to be involved in that program. So you essentially became known for getting things done. Yes. Right, and I think, you know, something I often talk to people about at the start of their career. And I've said this previously on the podcast, but one of my favourite quotes is, you know, it's not what you know or who you know, it's who knows you. Yes. And you build that brand and reputation, and opportunities will find you. Yeah, 100%. And I think we talked about this earlier. It's you know, earlier in my career, I was very results driven. And where I wanted to always be seen to be delivering, getting stuff done. But it's really, on reflection, and specifically in the last few years, it's probably pivoted to still have that element, but it's really about how you make people feel. And humanising everything and building relationships. So it was about, you know, cultural aspects and the EQ, not just the delivery bits. Because if you go around burning people and stepping on people or doing whatever it is, you know, because, you know, I've been on the end of some of them behaviours in the past. It just doesn't work, you know. And Melbourne's a small town, and you know what goes around comes around, and this, for me, I just try and make people feel good in their time working with me, and we're delivering success, excellent, but it's really about the people and how I make them feel when they interact with me.
Yeah, absolutely. You left Coles, and you went to Target.
Yeah.
Was that part of the same group at the time, or how was that kind of structured?
Not fully.
Separate.
So they were sort of all owned by West Farmers.
Yeah.
I'd sort of just taken the opportunity. Coles had gone through, I think in my time they had a number of different MDs, a couple of different CIOs. Yeah. There was a whole change. It was a bit of a spill and fill happening at the time in the leadership team. And I thought to myself, what does it look like for me here? And I just said, I think I'll try something else. And, I got contacted actually by an agency who says, "Hey, you've got an opportunity down in Target. Would you be interested in that?" And when I found out who it was for, I knew the guy who was doing the hiring. Yeah. Immediately, gave him a quick call. Before I knew it was all sorted. But I wanted to finish off that retail ready-meat program. Yeah. So I asked for can you wait 3 months type of thing? I'll come in 12 weeks because the stuff I wanted to hand over and get done. Yeah. Again, a bit like the Milton Keynes. I didn't want to leave. I don't like leaving things until it's sort of, I feel like I'm in a place. Yeah, definitely. To sort of hand it off.
Again, I think it's one of the advantages of the tech sector. Yeah. That's so project focused that you do have those punctuation points where you can kind of say that's the end of a project or a program. Yeah. And now is a good time to move. Yes. And you've got those stage gates if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
But I also agree with you that Melbourne is a small place, but I don't think no matter where you work, seeing things through, particularly when you're 12 weeks from the end of a major project, it's just not the right thing to walk away.
That's exactly right.
And it doesn't say a lot. We talked just then about brand, reputation, what you're known for. If you get known as the person that bails because a good opportunity comes knocking 12 weeks early, it doesn't say a lot for you.
No, and it's not about the money either, right? It's like some people, I hear people going, "Oh, he went because he got an extra $100 there or something." You're just going, "What? Yeah. Really? Yeah. So your reputation's worth $100 a day, really?"
Yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah.
But for me, it's I believe it that I like to, like you said, protect my brand. It's very important to me to have that strong brand of getting stuff done, but being remembered for being a nice person and a good person. And like Jen says, it's for get 10 mates when you walk out of the room. Well, then great. Yeah, I prefer that than being known to somebody who's a bit of a dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, completely agree. You spent 6 months when you first joined Target, 6 months on IT improvement. Yes. And then you moved into a role as chief architect across IT strategy. Was that always on the cards when you joined that?
There was issues there, so they wanted me to review some of their working activities. They had no real governance or control. They put me in as an architect, but it was really to sort of assess how they're delivering solutions and technologies. So once I got in there, and again, me being me, just worked hard and established relationships and built some thinking and seeded ways of working into that leadership team and that next level down, particularly into the projects and programs. It just became a natural progression. Yeah. So I just sort of, it's never really about the money, like I said. So once I buy into the idea, I went in on a 6-month contract initially, just to sort of see whether I'd like it. I wasn't sure whether I'd like it. It was Geelong, and a bit of a slower pace, and the environment obviously a little bit different as well. So I went from Coles, which felt like it was getting up there in terms of technology and ways of working, and well into the 21st century. I went to Target. Felt like I stepped back a few years, and I had to again work on that to sort of go, all right, well, do I get frustrated by it, or do I work with it and actually try and change it? Yeah. And that was appealing to me, to make a change.
Yeah, great. And you had a pretty sizable team there of about 30, I think.
Yeah, at the end. Yeah.
So we haven't really talked about leadership. We've kind of alluded to it as we've kind of gone through the conversation. But was leadership natural for you?
Yeah, I think so. I'm probably a little bit of a, I'll walk the talk type of thing. So because I work hard and because I try and be nice and because I believe I've got a good level of EQ, I try and instill that in my team as well. So I like to be transparent and, authentic. So authenticity is very important trait in leadership, while also being strategic. So, if I have a plan and a vision in my head, I want to immerse that into everything that we're doing and show people that sort of North Star so that people understand what you're doing. Because I know that when I was at the start of my career, I always wanted to know, why are we doing that? Do you know what I mean? It's just like a natural question. Why?
Yeah.
You know, what value is that going to bring? So, and that's why I said about understanding the business, because sometimes you don't know you don't know why you're doing something. Well, then can you really make it a success?
Yeah.
So it's that me feeling like, could I take on that role? Yeah. Did I want to take it? Yes, I did. I wanted to be a leader. I always did. So I worked on them skills.
Yeah.
And I've worked really hard on it, and like I said, around my brand and perception of me, and you know, there's things I've honed down through the years. You know, I've probably softened quite a lot.
What are those things?
Probably just, you know, I'm Irish, so sometimes you say things and they might come across a little bit harsh.
Yeah.
Back earlier in my career,
Now
I'm really cognizant of my communication style.
Yeah.
And specifically, you know, back in the day, everyone was just sending emails. Now I don't really use emails too much. It's probably more around the conversation. So if I feel like I want to have a conversation with somebody that's maybe even challenging, I'll just go, hey, can we have a chat? And then, because sometimes emails can come across harsh.
Yep.
And you know, if you're not there sitting with the person, you don't understand them well enough, well then they're just not gonna. It's not gonna come out as you want it, as the intent. So I sort of work a lot on that in terms of, hey, can we just have a chat? And by the way, this is what I'm experiencing. So there's sort of techniques that I've learned down through the years. And Greater Western Water was a great school for that, because they sent us on a lot of leadership courses around how to communicate, have challenging conversations.
Yeah, great.
So I think that's something that I've really focused on, particularly the last 10 years.
So if there's one piece of advice, if you could go in a time machine now and go back and get Don in that first leadership time, what advice would you give yourself?
To the start of my career? Or
probably around becoming a leader specifically. What now you kind of look back, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years to that point. Yeah. Is there a specific piece of advice you'd give your old self?
Yeah. It would probably be just, you know, take people on the journey, stay calm.
Yeah.
You know, I think as you get older, you know, life tends to fill you with experiences where you start to empathise with people, like kids specifically in general. Like that softens you. Yeah. You know, any sort of hardships, deaths in families. You know, I've got 2 kids that have, you know, essentially disabilities. So you know, you start to all of a sudden empathise. Yeah. And got, you know, some of my first protocol is when I speak to somebody, is check in how they are. You know, how are we going? How are you? Let's set the scene first off in terms of a personal conversation, and they go, okay, on to the business side. Where's that? Yeah. Because sometimes people's behaviours drive a lot of performance. Yeah. And behaviours are based on experiences, so you don't know what people are going through at any specific time in their life, whether it's work or personal or whatever the case may be. And they might be frustrated, so all of a sudden they expose some behaviours. But if you don't tap into that, well then, you know, you will all of a sudden be pushing your agenda that probably is going to fail because you're not aware of where your teams are. So I'd probably, reflecting back to my first leadership role, which would have been over 15 years ago at this stage, back in Coles, of one of the leadership roles there. I'd probably just say start off with that. Because I used to do it when I was a consultant, so you'd always open the scene with, hey, how are you? How's the kids? How's the wife? Blah, blah, blah. But that was more when you were trying to sell stuff. Yeah. You know, whereas you get back to your team, then you go, all right, we need to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Tell me how you go. You know what I mean? I've never a micromanager anyway. So
leadership is sales too, though, isn't it?
Sorry?
Leadership is sales, as in you're selling ideas to your team.
Yeah, 100%.
So it probably does relate back to your consulting days.
Yes.
As in, to your point, you need to bring people on the journey and not contrive sales, by the way, but you need to build those relationships because you're never going to get from A to B unless the team understand where you're going.
100%, which is where the point I was trying to make earlier. Like earlier in my career, was probably results focused. Yeah. I always tried to be nice and have a laugh and whatever, but it was just the structure around it. Yeah. So disciplines and structures and experiences. That's probably the main thing. So it'd probably be just stay calm. If talking to myself, I go, what are you doing? Stay calm, deep breathe, think about your team first and foremost, start with that. Yeah. And then ask if everybody's okay, is everybody clear on what we're trying to achieve, and anything that I need to know, and then go from there.
Yeah, great. You moved on after 2.5 years or so, I think, from that role. How did you know it was time to move on?
There was a number of different indicators. I'd probably just reached a point in Target where I'd almost had enough. You know, it was just like there was lots of activities. In the end, I was being pulled into some projects and programs that weren't primarily technology focused. There was technology lenses to it, but some of it was to do with, you know, the establishment of the department stores division and looking at Kmart and potential, you know, synergies in the supply chain area. So looked at some of that stuff. That came to an end, and I was probably going back into just a normal IT run of the mill, and went, I'm probably, I think it's time to move. And I knew they were moving to Williams Landing as well, and it was just like, well, if I'm going to go to Melbourne, back to Melbourne, I may as well, you know, go to Melbourne. And I got sort of, I had a good network of connections, and there was always people asking what I was doing and whatever, and eventually I just listened and said, I'll have a listen.
And you went to, at that point, City West Water?
Yes.
Again, I was sort of reading through your resume, and it was interesting the way it was kind of put together. It looked like you initially joined them again on like a 6-month consultant contract as an IT consultant.
Yep.
And it kind of got me thinking, looking through the trend, if you like, in your resumes, you go in as a kind of troubleshooter.
Yes.
I was going to say troublemaker, right? But trouble.
That's well.
Yeah, that as well. But as a troubleshooter, normally for about 6 months. Normally because there's a problem, which probably suits your problem sort of solving nature, and then you kind of evolve into the next role.
Yes.
And from what I could see there, again after 6 months, you moved into head of technology.
Yes.
So I was just interested, is that the kind of the MO for Don? You go in, you kind of fix the problem, figure it out what's going on.
In some ways,
add the value, and then you kind of find yourself in the right role in the business.
I think in City West, to that point, like I like going into places that are a little bit challenged. Yeah, you know, BAU isn't for me. I think I need to be transforming a business, or you know, if there's M&A activities going on, which is definitely transformation. That's something that really starts my engine every day, makes me jump out of bed. I think with City West Water, again, it was just an opportunity. I'd worked with the CIO at the time, Peter Hurahan, on that meat project in Coles. He was brought in as a consultant there because he was an ex-CEO, a CIO in a different organisation prior. And Peter brought me in and said, can you have a look at our architecture practice? We're looking at potentially architectural services. Plus, you know, on the side, tell us how we're delivering projects. Tell us, make some recommendations. Just take a look at the whole thing end to end, and you know, see what we can do to uplift. And I started to formulate a lot of that. I went in as, like I said, just a consultant to help with the establishing architecture practice, and do them reviews. Peter left after about 2 months. So then I was like, what the hell? What am I doing? So I had all these sort of notes and position papers, etc. And I just said, I'll just keep going. A guy called Andrew Oakbourne came in. He was an interim. And when I put all the notes in front of him and said, you know, there's opportunities in this space and this space and this space, he sort of said, well, why don't you just run it? You seem to have the ideas. He wasn't really confident with some of the people that were there. So he asked me to take it on. And I said, okay, I will. So I went straight into that role. Managing the full program for technology, and then Jen Ribeiro started obviously a couple months later, and straight away me and Jen had just hit it off. You know,
What's that?
I don't know. It's just personality. You know, sometimes you just sort of click with some people. You know, I think she came in and she, as Jen says, she said she was a bull in a china shop, but she's just she likes to make things happen. And
just a bit of a co-conspirator.
So do I. So, like, you know, I think with my experiences and, you know, that broader thinking pieces and Jen's oomph behind the scenes, we were just like, you know, like a little dynamic duo of making things happen in the business. We put business cases together to get establishment of a new digital team, and, you know, we brought in some really skillful people to help build that out. And there was the whole customer first strategy. There was a cultural issue, so Jen really liked how I engage with people. As she said, I'll make 10 friends in 5 minutes. So she put me onto like the management culture council and stuff. So that was really interesting for me as well, because all of a sudden I was sitting with the managing director and we're talking about culture and how we're going to cultural change and the culture programs that we're bringing out and the training and all them other activities. And before we knew it, then it was, we were getting merged with Western Water.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I just want to ask about the Culture Committee, because I did see that on your resume. Look, there's tons of stuff on there, by the way, the Digital Future Project and some incredible achievements through that time. But the Culture Committee really stood out for me.
Yes.
Because I could see you were part of that. You worked with the managing director. What does a great culture look like to you?
I think for me, culture's it's how you do what you do. Right?
Yeah.
So I think a good culture for me is where people are clear on their roles and they feel safe.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've got safety in your environment and people don't feel threatened in any way and they're clear on what they need to achieve and there's development opportunities for them and they understand what everybody else is doing in the organisation.
Yeah.
Well, then it's sort of, they feel empowered, and if you empower them, because I'm not a micromanager, I never have been, it's not my style, but I think that you need sort of within the hierarchies people to be clear on their roles and how they join the dots on everything else.
Yeah.
And then the teams will just follow.
Yeah.
Because they'll feel like, I'm contributing to this target and I'm really clear on what that means.
Yeah.
And if everybody's in alignment, well, we're all heading the same direction.
So autonomy, accountability, and guidance by the sound of it. And
transparency. Like to me, like I said, that authenticity. Like if things are going wrong, it's okay to get up and go, hey, you know what? I know it's frustrating. This is, we're all here, but things have changed, and you need to pivot with the business to go this way. As long as we're all clear on that, this is, and again, make people feel safe.
Yeah, great. You, as you mentioned, you reported into Jen.
Yes.
And you had a great relationship. But how did Jen shape you?
I think we sort of shaped each other. We used to challenge each other. Like I think she said we fought like cats and dogs. But yeah, we did challenge each other quite a bit in terms of how we operated. I think that, how did she shape me? I think some of the times it was probably more because she like she said, she really likes to get stuff done, as do I. But we both have to go, there's a different way to do it.
Yeah.
So it was just that sort of different thinking.
Yep.
So it wasn't, and I'd always step back and go, what does anyone else think? And I've probably even done that now with my own leadership team. Yeah. So rather than just going hell bent on what we're going here, I'd probably touch base with my leadership team and go, hey, I'm thinking here. Anyone got any positions or feedback on that? Because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So it's not a dictatorship. It's probably more a committee.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
I believe in collective accountabilities in the leadership team. So it's not my job. I'm accountable for IT, but everyone else is responsible for getting the results. Because at the end of the day, I'm only as good as my team. And it's not about me. I'm just there to figure ahead and manage the relationships and remove blockers and make sure that the everybody around, my peers, the managing director, and in this case family owners, feel confident that we're doing the right things. But I can't do that unless I've got a strong team who are in alignment with me. Because if I'm trying to push them in a direction that they don't feel comfortable in, then we're never going to win.
Well, you're just getting lip service at that point to your vision, but it's never going to happen. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And Jen helped shape some of that because, she allowed me to have a voice.
Yeah, okay. Right. So she modelled it. She modelled exactly, I guess, the expectations of what that looks like to be a team. Yeah. And you saw the success of that too.
Yeah. And I think the executive team in Greater Western Water were like that as well. Like Marie Lang and David before were very open to feedback as well. So, there was managers as a committee. So, again, it came from the top, you know, and I think that's really important. And Jen obviously modelled all that for us, so it was great.
And it's interesting because Greater Western Water, dare I say, is probably not the most glamorous organisation from the outside looking in terms of what you're doing. But some real talent has come through that group. over the last sort of 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
That have gone and done some incredible things. You know, obviously, sort of Jen's gone on to something else, yourself and Shuba and other people.
Yes.
It's pretty impressive what that group has done.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. You know, but it was purposeful. It didn't happen by accident. You know, and I think a lot of that started with, I'd say, probably David Ryan, who was the managing director at the time, and then the baton was taken on with Marie Lang in terms of the cultural programs, just the whole change programs, how you manage change, being mindfulness, the whole mindfulness piece, and specifically, you know, just I think it was I'm trying to think of the words. It was that empathetic view, so building your EQ and being a leader, because one of the mantras there was everybody's a leader. Yeah. So if you're not taught how to be a leader, well then how can everybody be a leader? That
into action.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So there was lots of programs around that.
Yeah, definitely. Look, you reminded me. It's sort of one of my favourite quotes at the moment. But no team, culture, organisation ever drifted towards excellence.
Yes.
Right. It happens on purpose. It's a mindful goal. Almost a couple of years ago now, you moved to Armaguard.
Yes.
Brilliant recruitment company. Worked with you on securing that role. But I guess with that track record, you would have had a huge number of options probably available to you. So what kind of drew you to Armaguard?
I'd sat a number of different interviews in the lead up to Armaguard. I was pretty transparent with Jen and the executive team in Greater Western Water. Before I left that, I was, my time had come.
Yeah.
I'd been there, done that. I'd even in Greater Western Water, I started to move more into industry roles. I became co-chair of the Swan Digital APAC Partnerships environment. So I just felt that like I was losing that oomph. I was becoming a little bit BAU. My leadership team was really strong, and they could probably survive without me, and they did. Right? Yeah. So when I wanted to move on, it had to be the right fit. Like I said, it had to be an organisation that was either in a challenged way or not BAU. So I wanted something that was going to be transformational or going through a merger. Yeah. What attracted me to Linfox Armaguard was, it was a completely different type of environment. So Coles was obviously managed by shareholders, West Farmers, etc. Target same, obviously. Accenture was consulting practice. In Ireland, they were mainly government organisations. Yep. City West Water, light government. Yep. To move into a family-run organisation, and just asking the right questions in the interviews, where what's the ways of working, what's some of the challenges you have, it just stood out. And I just went, sounds great. It was really for me. I just went and I've absolutely loved it. Yeah.
I think it's been a couple of years, but I think there's it's definitely given you the challenge that you wanted. Yeah. And an opportunity. What do you enjoy most about being CIO?
I'm just a business person that has technology skills. Yeah. So I love solving problems, to the point that I've always made. So it's understanding different business problems, and Armaguard is a really challenged environment at the moment, but it's facing into that. Yeah. And working with the executive team, and the executive team there is absolutely excellent. It's probably one of the best I've been in. Everybody is so aligned in what we're trying to achieve and how we're going to achieve it. And I think what I enjoy about it is that I bring something to the table. It's like, like we were talking earlier today about soccer. I played soccer for a team that won a championship a few years ago, and the wonderful thing about it is everybody knew their roles. Yeah. And everybody had experiences, but you're only as good as the collective. Yeah. And I think for me, playing into that and being clear and having a strong leader and CEO above me, and being totally aligned, that's something that I really enjoy. And then being able to, bring everyone else in IT on that journey, as well as the rest of the business. So being a leader, that's...
It just happens that your domain is tech.
Yeah.
But being the leader and solving things.
Yeah, exactly. And just being... I love going around the business. I love going to the depots. I love going everywhere and meeting people and just hearing their experiences and see how they work, and go away and go, I think we can fix that.
I feel one day I'm going to walk down Collins Street and see you walking out of a bank with a bag of cash, no coins, putting it in the back of a truck.
Yeah, probably.
It wouldn't surprise me. I'm going to ask you a few sort of broader career questions. Kind of now we've kind of got to the present day, I guess. What are you most proud of in your career?
Look, I think. Yeah, just reflect on that one for a second. What am I most proud of? I think getting through, there's so many things. It's always about the people. I just look at the challenging times I've had. And there's a couple of different instances I'm going to give you now.
Yeah.
But one was definitely getting through COVID with the team that we had and delivering and still changing the business. We'd only just merged as an organisation. And to get that over a line, on time, in budget, blah, 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 but it was the people and how we banded together and the little ceremonies that we used to have, and we'd still laugh, and we've still got the WhatsApp chats now. Like the guys still talk on the WhatsApp chats, and half of us are in different organisations. That's something that I was really proud of, and how the team still evolved, still delivered, and we won together. The other bit is probably, just the growth of, I'm proud of myself. It's okay to be proud of myself.
Of course it is,
tap myself on the back. And specifically my wife as well, Joanne, because, we've grown together. She's helped me as much as anybody in my whole career, because she always has that different point of view, and nobody knows you more than your wife. You know what I mean? So, you constantly evolve and grow each other, and now she's basically CIO. Work safe.
So I'm going to have to ask this question, because it's very unusual to get a husband and wife both CIO. Like, over dinner at night, you're talking about like Azure versus AWS. You're talking about data lakes.
I've got both.
You got both. But what are you able to go home and talk about your problems and work together?
Yeah, we do all the time. Sometimes we try and turn her off and go, all right, that's enough about work. Yeah. But it is difficult. But we do try and tap out. We're first and foremost parents and people, and obviously we're husband and wife. So we tend to just laugh over things quite a lot. And sometimes you just laugh over a meeting that you've had during the day, because you just go, you wouldn't believe. And that's the stuff that makes it funny. But when there's a challenging conversation, or there's a challenging position that either of us are in, we do tend to talk it through. Just go, hi, can you believe this happened? Blah. Okay. Well, what are you thinking? Great. Well, yep, that's what I'll do. Make sure you do this though.
I was going to say, do you find yourself slipping into problem solving mode as well there?
Sometimes, and I'm just told, no, you don't understand the environment. Oh, okay.
So I'm sure it's appreciated. Do you have any career regrets?
No. I think everything I've done in my career has shaped me to who I am, and you make mistakes, but the best thing that you'll do in life is learn from it and move along. I think you learn more from the failures than what you do from anything else. There's probably one or two places I might have stayed a little bit too long, but it is what it is. But no, I don't regret anything. Like, I am who I am today because of everything I've been through, and I always try and laugh my way through it, or smile, and just try and have a sense of humour about it. Do you know what I mean? And that's what, even with me and Joanne, we tend to laugh over things a lot because, sometimes life's just funny.
Is there anything you haven't done in your career that you'd like to do?
Oh, look, I think next steps, I'd probably, my aspirations is eventually be a CEO somewhere. But it needs to be the right role and the right size organisation and the right whatever. But that's just the growth path. And, I need the certain skills that you still need to develop on that, in terms of, operating at that level. I think I could do it for specific sizes, but for larger organisations, it's a different beast. It gets more political.
I think that CIO to CEO is going to become more common.
Yes.
Because I think technology is becoming more and more important. I think it used to be COO, CFO into CEO.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you the data on how many CEOs were CIOs at some point in their career, but my gut feel is that's going to increase in the next decade.
I tend to agree with you. I think digital or IT roles at director levels is far more common, and a lot of boards these days now have IT or technology representation on them as well because of the risks of cyber, etc. So, you know, and especially in terms of transformation, you know, IT people tend to do this stuff quite well. So, you know, if you want to get something done, in most instances they'll come to IT and look for a project manager or a program manager or whatever, because the structure and governance and disciplines that are in place.
Well, probably three of the most talked about important aspects of business in the contemporary world is cyber, data, AI.
Yeah.
You know, they're the things that are threats and opportunities any business plan at this point in time.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think therein lies the opportunity for tech leaders.
Yes.
I think the days of being IT support, the guy you phoned when when your computer didn't work, I think, you know, that's we've come a long way in the last probably 20 years.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, IT people tend to need to understand businesses more and more, which is why I mentioned earlier in my career, I always try to get heavily involved in whatever industry I'm in. So make sure that you get out, boots on the ground, figure out what the problems are, and then solve some of them problems, but bring people on the journey while you're doing it.
Yeah, 100%. We're shaped by the feedback that we get throughout our career. Mm-hmm. So what's been the most significant feedback you've received?
I'm not sure about significant. I think at one stage somebody said to me, always be yourself. And I can't remember who it was.
Yeah.
But I think, and that's what I would give as advice to anybody in the career. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not what you do, it's sort of how you do it and how you make people feel.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that was quite important because I'm Don McGowan, I'm from Dublin, and I need to bring my own personality. I'm not a robot.
Yeah.
But I look for feedback all the time. Like, we have every single meeting every week that I have with my team. I always ask for feedback and go, are we doing this the right way? Has anybody got an opinion? So I'm always chipping away. And I just think that's just part of how I operate. That's the MO that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think in my life there was little snippets of things where people might say something and I go, well, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
And that might be significant.
Yeah.
Like I said, so the results-based bit.
And you still hear those voices, not hearing voices in your head, but you kind of hear those at moments as you're going through things, those bits of advice that you've had. Yeah,
exactly, 100%. So sometimes, like when something extremely frustrating happens, I have to go, hold myself and go, I'm a leader, I'm an executive, I need to model behaviours.
Yeah.
Whereas you might want to go home and scream or punch the bag or do whatever, you know what I mean? So you sort of have to sit there and go, remember who you are and what you are and what you're trying to achieve. And you know, the behaviours that I show are going to be modelled by people in my team. Like, they can't be negative behaviours. So
absolutely.
You really need to hold yourself, which is sometimes challenging.
It is challenging, and that's the balance, right, between being the authentic Don, and the Don that kind of has to have this, not facade, but has to show the right behaviours to their team. Yeah,
and you know, with my leadership team, I'm not afraid to, you know, grab people in the room and go, okay, this is really frustrating me. Help me through, or help me understand how this came about. And they'll go, oh, it's X, Y, and Z. All right, great. But you can't go around an office ranting and raving and pulling people up. It just doesn't work. No. So, you know what? I always believed, and I do this all the time with my team, where we have a result or a good win, shout it from the hilltops. But if there's a challenging conversation, pull people into a corner and go, what's going on? Tell me what happened.
Well, it goes back to people, right? Most people don't want to be called out in public.
No, never.
Or feel that kind of shame or humiliation for their failures.
Yes.
Most people are happy to be accountable for it, but in the right setting.
Yeah, and like I said, it's that, what if the behaviours are wrong, what's driving the behaviours? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And it's about having them conversations in a constructive way. And one of the things that I learned in Greater Western Water was techniques around that, specifically SPIN, which is situation, behaviours, impact, next steps. And I always think of that every time I go, right, this is going to be hard. And then I just have a conversation and go, talk to me.
But that's it's a great feedback model because it depersonalises it.
Yes.
As well for people. So I think that's the issue. Some people give feedback and it's very personal.
Yes.
Or it can come across very personal in that way. But as you say, you're addressing the situation, the behaviour in the situation and the impact. It separates the two, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you have to do that because, again, business is business, people are people, right? So you have to understand they're a person. So what's going on? Talk me through it. And sometimes things just happen, so you just have to manage to it.
Final kind of career question, and you maybe touched on it a few minutes ago, but if there was a singular piece of sage advice that you would give to the next generation, what would it be?
Yeah, I think just be yourself. I think, like I said, it's not robots. We're not robots. And again, be yourself, but it's not about, it's how you make people feel, right? Yeah. And you don't have to get to CIO. Just because you pick a career path in IT, you don't have to get to the top. Like, some people might just, I'm in infrastructure, maybe an infrastructure engineer, I'm going to be a cyber engineer. That's it. Okay. It's fine. It's okay to stop. You'll know where you are, but don't be afraid to put yourself into uncomfortable situations to test the waters. Yeah. So I'd probably, sage advice would be yourself, but don't be afraid to push, to figure out where you fit. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're going to fit somewhere. Yeah. And you might not even fit in IT in the end. You might go, I don't like sitting behind a desk. I'd rather be out, digging holes or, serving people, because sometimes that just happens. You might go, it's not for me, and it's not the role or the career I want. But you won't know until you try some stuff. So just try it. I just happen to try lots of things, and I love them all. Yeah. And then when they're all added together, it ended up being a CIO. Do you know what I mean? It's just one of them things. But if you don't suck it and see, you'll never know. And like I mentioned earlier, I put myself into uncomfortable positions, whether it's going to the UK, going to Accenture, coming to Australia, trying different things, go to Geelong, come back from Geelong. Yeah. It's just, but it's me, and that's why I said I've got no regrets, because I've tried it. Yes. Some stuff worked, some stuff didn't. Great. But I learned more and more about myself, which is really important, and people, and how my behaviours and my activities impact my family as well. Yeah. I
did say last career question. It's something I was going to ask you earlier, and I'm going to ask it now. You talked about that sliding doors moment early on in your career, where the company essentially scaled back down to about 20 people, and some of those people left IT. If you weren't in tech now, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'll be a soccer player. No, I'm only I wouldn't have made any money.
You'd be broke.
I'd be broke, but I'd be happy. I don't know. Yeah, I think I really, that's a good question actually. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'd try my hat at anything. I think it's about me and my personality. It doesn't matter what I wanted, what I would do. I'd always put every effort into it to make it work. Yeah. So if I was a carpenter, great, I'll go build houses. You know what I mean? It's just it's just wherever would work. Yeah. I don't know. I always liked engineering, like I said, so it'd probably be some sort of building or construction or something like that.
Okay, last I guess sort of part of the conversation. Podcast, books. Kind of what's your go-to? What recommendations have you got?
I'm not much on podcasts, and with the greatest respect, I've watched
right,
a few of yours, but and I do like watching these. Books, there's only one book that probably sticks out. It's by Barry O'Reilly, which is Unlearn. Yeah. And I think I take that, and it's really around a growth mindset. And the reason why I like the book is because it's probably, again, a bit of MO for me. I mean, it's as much as I've got experience and I understand how things should happen or whatever the case would be, you'll always learn new tactics, new techniques. Yeah. And I'm open to that with everything. Yeah. And that's why with my leadership teams that I've had, as much as in some instances people have followed me from one organisation to another, I actually appreciate when there's somebody new in there, because they make you think a bit differently. Yep. And they'll challenge you in a different way. Because I'm not going to be always right. And I might have an opinion in my head, but it'll only work if everybody's on the same page. So it's about unlearning and not falling into the trap of going, I've done that 5 times before, this is the best way to do it. It might be wrong. Yeah. And there's an example in that book of Serena Williams when she hit a bit of a part of her career where she'd stopped winning, and some of the other upcomers, Sharapova, started to beat her, a couple of others, and she changed coach. The new coach immediately pulled her techniques apart, pulled everything apart in terms of how she was moving around the court, and made her almost start again.
Yeah, right.
And that's what made her drive on and win many more titles. And it's just, it was just to see living examples of it and the journeys that they went on.
Yeah.
The other things that I do tend to do a lot, I read a lot of LinkedIn, so I read lots of articles. And I like watching documentaries on sporting people. And,
watched anything good recently?
Federer was good.
Yeah, okay.
That was on Netflix. Yeah.
I enjoyed, actually, I just watched the one on the Tour de France.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it, but I've seen it.
Yeah, definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
It gave me that's a bonkers sport.
Yes.
Like 3,500 Ks they do in 20 days. It's but yeah, that's a good doco.
Yeah. And it's amazing because coming back to the sporting team, like you can't win, especially team sports, and even most individual sports these days. They talk about the team.
Yep.
When Nadal wins, or Federer wins, or Djokovic wins, or whatever.
Yeah, correct.
They always talk about my team. Right?
That's right.
Because they're the figurehead, but they can't do anything without the team.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's probably just. I like to understand the techniques and see how they're talking to the people and the way they appreciate stuff, and I like to take that on myself and almost model myself on it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Just because it just makes sense.
Yeah,
and there's
definitely
highly successful people, so how are you going to learn if you're not looking at the best in the business, one of the greatest athletes in the world, Federer, to see how he talks to his people and his team? It's amazing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people look at sport, particularly things like tennis. It's an individual sport, and you see the individual.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to the cycling example. I was watching some highlights from the Tour de France this week, and a young fella won. Can't remember who it was now, but the first thing he said when he got off the bike, he said, "We did it."
Yes.
It wasn't I did. He's just ridden 200 kilometres up a mountain, but it was we did it. And,
100%.
I think that's a big shift in sport, particularly the individual sports now.
Yeah.
It is a team effort to get that success.
100%. I read the book on Michael Schumacher a number of years ago.
Yeah, okay.
I forget who wrote it. It's the guy who was the commentator on the BBC. Well, it used to be the BBC, it's not anymore. And he was talking about Schumacher and how he changed and transcended the sport to become bigger than the sport. But Schumacher always talked about his team and always spoiled his team.
Yeah.
It was never about him. And he'd talk about it in terms of, the team does 80-90% of the job.
Yeah.
I just drive the car, get it over the line. Now he could drive it better than anybody else.
Yeah.
But his professionalism and his athleticism, and he brought a whole new dynamic to the sport. Right. They had to be athletes. They used to be just like sort of blokes in the car. Now all of a sudden they're doing 200 push-ups a day type of thing. So it's just like, the amount of water that they lose and all that type of stuff. So it just goes to show there's disciplines that take you there. And none of this stuff happens by accident. Like the point you made earlier. So, and I think that in everything we do in work, it's like you always have to be practicing. You always have to be thinking, and to get that next win, you always have to be disciplined.
It was something actually you touched on earlier. You talked about understanding your failures.
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate for also understanding your successes.
Yes.
Because at that point you've got something you can replicate, repeat,
and
learn from. Otherwise, if you attribute your success to luck,
there's
nowhere to go. Yeah,
100%. But then with the unlearned mindset, you need to probably take, is there anything we could do different?
Well, that's also
a different approach. So you get the ingredients.
That's right.
And the main parts of it would be great. But what if I put a bit of salt or a bit of pepper or a little bit of cayenne? Does it make it any better? And that's
you're just the tinker man. You can't help yourself.
No, but you have to challenge yourself.
Of course, I'm putting your leg. Look, thanks for your time. This is probably the most civilised conversation we've ever had. By the way, the whole time I've known you, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's okay. No, I really appreciate it. And thank you. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Yeah, great.
Good. Thank you for listening to Tales from Tech Titans, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to get more insights about tech careers, then check out the Emmbr, that's EMMBR LinkedIn page for the latest updates, articles, and engaging discussions.